All right, welcome to Harmony and Hustle, the Power Couple podcast. I'm your host, Lou Reynolds, and I'm here with my amazing wife, Sabrina Reynolds. So, Sabrina, tell us what is on the table today.
Today, we are talking about practical ways to keep your relationships a priority.
Nice. Okay, very good. So, tell us about how you keep your relationships a priority.
Well, first, I want to share with our audience why we're even talking about this. And that is because we have experienced burnout many times and not kept each other and our family as the priority. And we've let business really overtake our lives. And just really want to share how we have learned in our mistakes to overcome the burnout and the overwhelm and all of everything in order to keep our relationship as the priority.
Yeah, it's easy to start thinking that you know what your priorities are and you know what's important just based on outlying factors. Things that you know are important, but it doesn't necessarily mean in the list of priorities that that is your top priority. And so I think we need to address those things and talk through how are we doing that prioritization and doing it effectively so that we're really showing up in our relationships the way that we should. Just as a disclaimer to everything that I'm talking about today, everything that I'm saying today and Sabrina is saying today, this is all around the understanding that our relationships take top priority. It's not that, there aren't other things that are important. There are. But we have to understand that if we don't foster our relationships effectively, then we are not going to be able to get the kind of support, the kind of things that we need from the people who love us dearly in order for us to do those other things that we feel like are so important.
Yeah. So, in sharing that, we have been in this constant rhythm of the drum line in the thunderstorm type of rhythm to our lives. We have experienced burnout in so many different seasons. It's hard to pinpoint just one, but of all the times that we burned out, we've recognized specific signs, specific things that have indicated that we were in burnout. A big one for me, how I know that I'm in burnout, is I'm really not enjoying the people that matter most. I am constantly irritated over the slightest things that on a normal basis it wouldn't really bother me, but I'm just irritable. And those are really signs when I know that I have a thing where I put myself in timeout. Where if I know that I'm so annoying that I'm annoying myself, I'm like, okay, it's time. I gotta put myself in timeout, really take a break and figure out why am I so irritated? Why am I so miserable? Like what's going on with me? Those are some of the signs that let me know, okay, I am burning out. Something's out of whack. What is it? I need to take inventory and figure out what's going on here.
Yeah, I'd add to that too. Another thing that I notice is for me, what's going on with my time. So if everyone who I'm in relationship with wants to spend time with me in some capacity, they're looking for my time and I don't ever have it to give. And I'm having that internal feeling like I don't have time for this. I know that I'm well on my way to burning out. I'm in a position where I am not utilizing that time to the best of my ability in order to keep me at a level where I can produce inside of the things that are important. So if the way I look at it is if the things that are so important, quote unquote important, if those things are so super important that I don't have time for anything else, it probably means I'm not doing very well at those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And a big thing with burnout, it has an impact. Sometimes we think that we're hiding it well, but we notice, especially between us, we notice sometimes before each other notices that burning out and that it's impacting our relationship and our relationship with our kids. They may not be able to verbalize it, or in the past, they may not have been able to verbalize it, but you can tell when things are just awry and off what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I think too, those things will call for your attention. So inside of your relationships, it's important to identify what those key points are, those key, I guess you would say, triggers
Mm.
that let you know something's not right
S-
inside that relationship.
So, like key signs.
Key signs, thank
Okay.
you, that you'll notice and you'll say, "Something's not going right here."
Mm.
And I'll just give this example for our audience is with us. When we start arguing about things that absolutely make no sense to argue about, it's become apparent that we are spending too much time in the work that we do. Even though we work together, we're spending too much time in the work and not enough time in the relationship building.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is definitely a key sign. We have intense fellowship quite often, but it's I think how the arguments end, that to me is an indicator of, okay, something's off. Because we can have an argument and we're done. Okay, we didn't agree or we came to an agreement or what have you, but we're like, okay, so what do you want for dinner? What's next? What do you want to watch tonight, on Netflix? But when we are off kilter, that to me is an indicator that we're burning out. When we end the argument with, all right, we'll just agree to disagree and we're not talking. We just need a minute to cool off and we're not really having those real conversations. It's not, hey, hun, what are we having to dinner? It's like, what do you want? What do you want to eat? I think there's a difference between those two.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree totally. But let me ask you this, Sabrina. How do you keep our relationship as the priority when sometimes business is really like knocking on the door?
That's a really good one, especially for a workaholic like me. I have to put it in as a habit. And it may sound impersonal or not frilly enough when you're like, well, I just have to make it a habit. But like, okay, so when I go into my calendar and I say, my habit is I am going to end work at this particular time. And on this particular day, we have a date night that is scheduled. No matter what, we need to make that as a priority because with my calendar, that's where I'm putting things in. And if I am not putting you in on my calendar, that's a problem. I'm also checking in with you to see how you're doing more often than I used to. Before, I would assume this is how you felt because I saw you react a certain way to a comment, or we ended an argument not so nicely, and now we're not really talking. I would assume what you were thinking, and I would create a script in my own brain as to what's happening. But now I'm taking a step back to actually ask you, hey, I just want to figure out what's happening with you. And I think that really helps me to keep you as a priority and not just the story I want to tell about what your facial expression was.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The thing that I look at with our relationship and keeping it a priority, so, love is a driving factor inside of your relationships. Because just speaking to Sabrina and I's relationship, but this is true in all of my relationships, the love that I have for the person is what I try to keep as the central focus. So sometimes things come up in business that it's like it requires my attention.
Mhm.
I know that this needs to get done. It probably has some deadline attached to it, and I recognize that. But then I start to think about, okay, what about this person and how I feel about them? Do they know how I feel about them? Because this particular task is going to take me X amount of time to be able to do effectively. So, what am I doing What am I not going to be doing in that time?
Mm.
Because whatever it is that I'm not gonna be doing, that would have told that person how much I love them and how much I care about them. I need to do something about that. I can't just let that ride because then it becomes the trade-off. I'm trading the relationship for the business. And then you've already answered the question of what your true priority is. And so that's why I have to go back. It's not that the thing inside of business isn't important or that I'm not going to do it. It's just I've dissected it in terms of what's the time that it's gonna take me to do that thing? And then, okay, how do I make sure that the people that I love, the people that I care about, that need and deserve my attention, how are they gonna get that attention with me doing this thing? And I begin to build around that to make sure that I'm communicating that love that I have for you or anyone else that's inside of that sphere, effectively.
I think you're also doing a better job with communicating the fact that it's gonna take a certain amount of time. You say, "Hey, I'm gonna need an extra 30 minutes out of this chunk of the day. Is that okay?" That has been a game changer for us. I may not want you to spend extra time, but the fact that you communicate it and say, "Hey, this is really pressing right now. I need to really take care of this so then I can focus in." That has been really helpful. Now, of course, we can't abuse it.
Right.
And every day can't be, "Oh, I need an extra hour even though we said we'd end at 5." That can't be the constant. And I think that communication, being a little bit more open, has really been helpful.
I think too that a part of that is the level of respect that we have inside of our relationship. So in the past, you made mention of how you make assumptions inside of your head
Yeah.
and you tell yourself this whole story. And so I'm like, she's super busy and she's so involved and engrossed in what she's doing right now. She won't even miss the fact that I'm going to put an hour into this project that I'm doing to make sure that I get this done in a timely fashion instead of actually talking to you. So what happens is, much like I said before, I've not communicated the level of love that I have for you. I've not told you that I'm looking forward to our time together. And so you are making your own assumptions about me and what I'm thinking. And inevitably what happens is that at the end, I finish my project in my hour and you wrap up what you're doing. And then we're like, okay, I guess we're going to go and do whatever now. Instead, just that small, and I know it seems insignificant, but trust me when I say it is definitely not. And as Sabrina put it, it has been a game changer in our relationship. Is the 30 seconds of actual talk and conversation when I say, "Hey, honey, love you so much. I can't wait to do X." And you can figure out whatever your thing is that you wanna plug in there that you wanna do together. "I can't wait to have dinner tonight. I'm so looking forward to it. Are we gonna go out to that place you mentioned? Because I really wanna go there. Can you give me about 30 minutes just to finish this up? And then, man, I can't wait to go." That is so vastly different from I don't need to say anything here. Let me just get my project done, and then we can talk about dinner after.
Yeah, and we've been that bullheaded before. Where we'll just plow through and not even consider the fact that each other may be waiting for a moment to even just say, "I I care enough about you to stop working."
Yeah.
And that's been a big thing. One of the things that I feel that is a way for us to prioritize is to do an exercise where you're actually reviewing your week, reviewing how much time did you really spend with your family, with your spouse, with your loved one, with your friends, the people that matter most to you. How much time did you really spend with them? And I'm not talking about just in hours, I'm talking about quality time. It's great to sit and watch a movie with your kids, but it's even better to have a conversation and have dinner with no devices. And ask, what was the best thing about your day today? I learned from our oldest, our son. He was very clammed up. And I would ask him, "Hey, how was your day today?" And I'd get, "Good. It was all right.
Hmm.
It was fun. It was wonderful." Just the one word answers. And then I found this this technique is ask open-ended questions where it can't be answered in a good, fine, yes, no. You have to answer it in at least one sentence. And that was the key question I would ask him. What was the best part of your day? What part of your day gave you some joy? It would usually wind up being lunch or gym, but but at least I got some kind of answer that wasn't just a one-word thing. And I feel that helps to open up the doors of communication to start more of a conversation rather than everything either being a teachable moment, because we get like that. We're teachers and we take every opportunity or we get something, we're like, okay, let's teach them a lesson. Let's show them how to do this or adulting or whatever. But just listening to them has been a game changer. Just really hearing their hearts and what's on their mind, what's bothering them, what's stressing them out, and not trying to fix it, but just listening. That has been, I feel, a great way to help us to prioritize our relationships.
I think a big part of quality time is you activating your listening skills. If you are spending quality time with a person and all you did was talk the entire time, I don't know how much quality they're getting out of this relationship. So it's important for us to come into those times, those quality times, knowing that it's quality because I want to know you better. And if I take the time to pause and listen to what you're saying, it makes what I want to say to you even that much more impactful because you know that I've heard your heart. And that's why, I feel like that's really important to employ. You mentioned in this a conversation about pausing to actually reflect. I think establishing rhythms that make sense, rhythms that you can look at and say, how did I do at that this week? Just like you were talking about, how much quality time did I spend? So in assessing that, I think it's important that it also helps you in writing the right rhythm for doing that on an ongoing basis. Sometimes I'm going to reflect on my week and I'm going to realize like, wow, I was way out of rhythm this week. Like I didn't take any time to truly invest in our relationship and making sure, and it may not be us, it may be another relationship. It might be with, my son, it might be with my daughter. But I recognize that I didn't do enough because this week when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about it in terms of what would they walk away with and say, man, dad loves me. Right? Or my wife saying, wow, I know he loves me. And when I search for those, if I'm unable to pick out that time and say, okay, that should have been that. I don't know if it is or it isn't, but that should have been that. If I can't even find that myself, how would I expect them to be able to find that time? Where would they point to say that? So that helps me then in rewriting my rhythm moving forward. How do I do that effectively moving forward?
That's good. That's good. And a lot of times people think that, oh, the way I show my love has to be something like a gift or I had to spend money in order to do that. And for me, I don't need that. Yeah, gifts are cool, but I don't need a gift. I want your attention. I want your time. I want to be able to go to the park and just walk with you. And even when we're walking in the park, if we've walked angry before, we've walked
Yeah, we
after.
do that well, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
We would do our angry walk. It's pretty aggressive, and before we know it, we've done several miles. It's like, "Oh, wow, look at that. We didn't even speak a word."
Right, right. Angry walk and angry cleaning. I do very well. He even said one time, I'm going to make you mad more often.
House looks amazing after a real good argument.
No, I totally forgot what I was saying, but I think it's I was talking about when we're walking or just doing things together, to me, that feels much better. That's free. It doesn't take any money
Yeah.
to go for a walk and just enjoy each other's company or text messages. That's one thing I love doing is while I'm thinking of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so blessed. My husband is a great man. I love him. I just need him to know how I'm feeling about him Or if there's a great scripture that I read and I'm like, oh, man, this will really encourage him. I will either send it right then, or if it's some ridiculous hour of the morning, I'll schedule a text and have it sent a little bit later, just as a reminder, just as a little love and little romance and sometimes a little flirting.
Well, I do think that sometimes people miss out on opportunities because they think that the value in what they're giving to their loved one is found in the price that they spent to get it, and that is so far from the truth. Some of the most expensive gifts that I've gotten over the years, like, I don't attach this sentimental feeling to that. In fact, it's some of the most inexpensive, many times free things that I've been given that, drive me to a point of feeling emotional about the love that was contained inside of the effort to give the gift. And so that's really important because we know that there are a lot of different love languages that you might have within your circle of people. And sometimes it's hard when you don't necessarily know the person well enough to figure out yet what that love language is. But it's important for you to understand that there are things that you can do to demonstrate how much you love a person that is not tied to the quantity of money that you put into that particular gift or thing that you do.
Yeah, I think it's even important too to show someone how much you know them, how much you've studied who they are as a person to get to understand their likes, their dislikes, their love language even. I use that with my kids to try to find out what their love language is with mom because I don't want to just express my love in my own language because it may not resonate with them. So I want to make sure that I'm understanding what their needs are and meeting their needs in that way. I think that's also important. Just getting to know them. I feel sometimes I look at it like as a challenge. So for all my competitive people, challenge yourself. Who can know each other the best?
Well, I will say that's a gift that you have is really getting to know someone and understanding what the things are that are important to them,
Mm,
that they really enjoy and that they really like. You do very well with that.
thanks, son.
Oh, you are welcome. But I wanna also make mention to parents out there, and parents, you can probably relate to this if you have children that are, well, of any age, quite honestly, but there's a point in time when you buy gifts for your children when they're young, and they only play with the gift for about 30 seconds, and inevitably, they start playing with, like, the box or the wrapping, or you've probably seen this many times at Christmas. We even had pictures of my daughter when she was little. She played with none of the gifts, but she took the bows
Should
off
love the
of
bows.
off of every gift, and that became, like, the greatest Christmas ever for her. She's got bows all over her. But, it taught me that you just have to sometimes give the attention that's needed and make sure that your heart is properly postured towards that person because it's not about the item itself. Sure, there are things that we enjoy and things that we're like, "Oh, I'd really love to get this or I'd really love to get that." But far more important than any of those things is the person who is that giver, like, they took the time, they took the effort, the energy to do what needed to be done so that I could have this gift, and getting time with that person or just something to say how much they care is so meaningful. It's far more important than what the thing is that might be inside of a box or whatever. So that's important for you to convey that love through the time that you're spending with the person, through the time that you are actually intent on really listening and understanding them better. Okay, what would you say is the one rhythm that you've established that you feel like has had the biggest impact on our relationship?
The one rhythm. Let's see. I would think our date nights, that was not a priority for us. We started with putting it on the calendar, but then things just constantly bumped it out of the way. we're like, oh, we got to do this and we still got to finish this project and we got to, I really don't feel like it. The weather's cold. The weather's hot. It's raining. It's windy. It's, all the excuses in the book for why we did not prioritize our relationship. But the truth is, we weren't really liking each other that much. Because if we really did, we would have really said, hey, this is something that we need because we want to spend time together. And I think even on the days when we're just not clicking, we're aggravated, we're having an argument that's not an intense fellowship, it's a for real argument. Having that date night on the schedule forces us to go out and have fun and do things despite what we're experiencing. And I think that has been a huge rhythm changer for us is prioritizing our date night. And even on the days where I'm not feeling well or, you're not feeling well, we'll still block out time where we don't necessarily have to go out and go axe throwing or go to the park or go out to dinner. We will block off that time and just say, hey, let's spend time together and have dinner and watch a movie at home. But we make sure that we're not talking about work, but that we are actually enjoying each other's company, even when we're mad.
Yeah, that has a lot to do with what I would categorize as intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were doing a podcast. You were on another podcast, and I was there in the studio. And what basically happened is I found myself watching what was happening inside of the chat. And so something happened in the chat that caused me to really be annoyed. And I want to address that thing.
Yes, Lou gets annoyed.
So something was said. You had talked about, our relationship and the things that we do intentionally to really make sure that we thrive inside of our marriage. And you talked about how, your feelings, sometimes your feelings are this or that, but you want to be intentional about feeding our relationship. And then someone else who was on that same podcast made mention of, yeah, well, because you're choosing to love and love is a choice. And then someone in the chat went on a bit of a tangent and talked a whole lot about how love, your feelings and what you feel are so important. And so if I'm not feeling like I love you, then, I'm not going to do all these things because, that's just not what I'm feeling at the moment. And, I don't, and they were expressing like, I don't have a choice if I really feel like I love someone. I don't have a choice about that. I just feel it. And I would love to put those things to rest because here's the thing. You just talked about how sometimes we can go through this period where we may have argued about something, but when that argument is over, I still love you.
Right.
I've made that choice a long time ago and it's not changing. And if it changed, it's because I chose to change it
Right.
because I get that choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, yes, I have a feeling that is like, oh, I'm overwhelmed by, the experience that I'm having with you and where we're going and spending this quality time together. And so, yes, yeah, I'm
Mushy,
having,
gushy, lovey, lovey, mushy, mushy.
yeah, sure. I'm having these feelings that are, on this next level of feeling that love. But it does, if I'm not having those feelings, does that mean I don't love you? That's crazy. That's absolutely insane. And I want to be clear that I get to love you. It's my choice. And I made that decision and I don't back away from that decision because we disagreed about something. Disagreements are life. Like if you get married and you are thinking that you're never going to disagree,
Oh,
you're in for a shock
a
pretty
rude,
quickly.
rude, rude awakening. It's gonna slap you in your face.
Yeah, so that's why, I wanna make sure that we get intentional about showing and demonstrating the love that we have for our partner, and then also the other people that are in our lives too, but I'm speaking specifically here to marriage relationships because it's easy to back burner those things, and over time, these things they're not a priority to us. We lose all intentionality, and all of a sudden, the other person starts to wonder, do you love me? Do you care? And it becomes really difficult then to say, "Oh, well, didn't I do this or didn't I do that?" And the other person's thinking, "Well, here are the things you didn't do." And it's just
Yeah.
really, really important for us to be intentional about demonstrating that love. It's not about how I feel today. I love you when I'm feeling great today about our relationship, and we're doing this that's so awesome and it's great, and I have the feeling of being on cloud nine. But I'm gonna love you tomorrow when I gotta get up and go to work, and I may not get to see you for a little bit because 'cause I'm really gonna be intentionally focused on doing that work, but my love for you isn't gonna change.
I mean, I think that's why we're talking about the rhythm and the practical things, because when you are just relying on your feelings, today I may feel like loving you, and tomorrow I may feel like I don't like you a lot. And if I'm doing things based off of just my feelings alone, then I could destroy my whole life. I could destroy the whole everything just based off of feelings. And that's why the rhythm is so important, that when you're not feeling like spending time together, you're still spending time together. And I'm not saying that this is easy. It is not easy when I'm annoyed with this guy over here and he's made me mad and we're talking about the same thing again and we're arguing about the same thing again. I don't always feel like going out to dinner with him because he just made me mad. And why doesn't he get it? But like Lou was saying, it's a choice. I choose to love him not because he agrees with everything I've ever said, but because of who he is. And I have to see beyond our disagreements to understand that this is my life partner. This is who God called me to. And I have to choose him every single day. It's not about a feeling, it's about a choice. And so when people don't get that, I feel bad for them because they're going to come against the time where they're going to fall out of the feeling or somebody's going to fall out of the feeling with them and the relationship is destroyed because of feelings.
Yeah, your feelings can lead you astray very easily.
Easily.
And that's why the whole terminology of "we've just fell out of love,"
Yeah.
like, I don't understand that terminology because it's a choice that you make, and that choice is a much harder choice in the difficult times,
Hmm.
but that's what we signed up for. I didn't sign up for times to be great all the time.
Right.
Like, that's just not reality.
Right.
But when I make that commitment, what I'm saying is when the times are great and when they get tough, I'm gonna still love you. And that's so important for us to recognize in our relationships, that the idea of falling out of love, no, you're having some bad feelings, right? You're upset about something. Something has gotten on your nerves, and perhaps having a conversation about that thing might be the initial step towards moving past that thing, recovering from that thing. May not be one conversation,
Oh,
might
no.
take many.
Yeah.
Some of them get resolved in one conversation, sure, that does happen from time to time, but many of them, it's gonna take a while, it's gonna take several conversations, but I'm just gonna love you through all of those conversations, and love, like we talked about in the very beginning, love should be a driving force to incline your ears and not turn on your mouth. That's just something that's really hard for us in relationships is, "I love you, and that's why I'm gonna tell you all the things you do that annoy me." That is not the ticket to resolution. So, when I really wanna demonstrate my love for Sabrina, what I do is turn on my ears and really listen to what it is that she's saying, because there's something that's causing a feeling, and she does the same for me. When she recognizes that I'm in my feelings, there's something that caused me to be that way, and so she gets really keen on listening to what those things are. I say all of these things because I recognize that many couples reach that point where they're like, I just don't like you.
Hmm.
Like, you're getting on my nerves, and therefore, I must have fallen out of love with you."
Right.
No, you have what's called normal feelings. Something annoyed you. You got upset. It's okay. The love, the reasons that you love that person, that hasn't changed. you've got some things to work through. And that's where the hard work comes in. Do the hard work. That's what I want to say to people, in all of your relationships. Do the hard work. Sometimes we make it seem like the difficult choice is, oh, I don't want to be in relationship with you anymore. Whether that looks like, I don't talk to you anymore, whether that's in a marriage relationship and you're talking about divorce, whatever that is, we make that seem like, oh, that's so hard. I want to let you know that's the easy choice. Don't fool yourself. You chose the easy choice. The hard choice is to sit down and have the real conversations and talk through and work through the things that are causing the feelings that you're having and saying, you know what, at the end of the day, I still love you. And so we're going to work through this. We're going to figure these things out.
Yeah, and I wanna talk about some of the intentionality and why we're talking about the practical steps, because sometimes we could ignore the day-to-day habits and think that, "Oh, it'll just smooth over. Oh, it'll just wash over, and eventually we'll be back to that time of bliss and where we used to be." But you have to really be intentional about forming good habits with your relationships, because those good habits will actually carry you through the times when your feelings are betraying you. When your feelings are telling you you want to quit, you want to leave, you don't want to put any more effort. And I put more effort into this than, the other person does, and all of those things. Because the truth is, sometimes the other person on the other side is saying the exact same thing about you.
Yeah,
You
so true.
Yeah, we've gotten to conversations where we're like, "Well, you do this." And he's like, "Well, you do this too." And I'm like, "No, you do it more." He's like, "No, you do it more." So you really have to be intentional about those habits. And this is why you got to take the feelings out of it and just really stick to the practical things, like dedicating those times to spending time together. If you're in a season which it's normal in marriage to go through a difficult season. This is part of the cycle of marriage. Every day is not bliss. You go through these highs and lows. You're not crazy. It's normal. This happens. But when you're in those low seasons, I think it's important to get help. I also think it's important to have help in the high seasons. So your lows are not as low as they can be. I feel that it's important to really bring people that into the marriage that can really assist you in making things better with your relationship, with your communication, with getting through a problem or maybe a cycle that you haven't been able to resolve. I think it's important to make sure that you're doing stuff like that. Even when we're in a good time now, we still have marriage coaches. And I feel that that intentionality to say we can't miss our counseling session, that's really helpful for us to make sure that we're really plugged in to what is it that we could be doing better, even in the good times, to improve on our communication, our relationship, period. And not just with each other, but I think these counseling sessions have helped us with our relationships with other people as well.
Absolutely. I think too, the thing that is so impactful is that in, like you called it, the high times, is that in the high times, we have built these bridges in our relationship that when seasons come and the tide rises and it's difficult, we've got bridges in place. And so sometimes when we're in difficult seasons and we're like, okay, we need help now. Now we need help. It's hard because we're trying to tread water in these difficult things that we haven't really worked through.
Mhm.
And so whereas when, you're building those bridges when times are great, when those periods come, you're like, "Okay, this isn't great, but you know what? We're gonna still be able to work through this. Remember when we said," and we have those bridges to lean on.
Yeah.
I do want to also kind of circle back to the other relationships that we have in our lives and say this to it, that when we're going through difficult things, stress can be a huge hindrance to your relationships.
Oh, yeah.
It can impact your relationships to the point where you are starting to put things on the other person that have nothing to do with them and everything to do with the stress that you feel you're under. Sometimes that can be work. Like, there's so many things that I'm dealing with at work and going through at work, and so I come carrying this stress to a conversation that we're getting ready to have about what you want for dinner, and it turns into
Ugly.
very, very ugly
Very
situation.
quickly.
And I wanna speak to it too from, like, the very broader sense. This is not just about, couples, marriages. This is in all of our relationships. If you are someone who has cut people off of, your circle or cut communication with people because of their political affiliation,
Mm.
like, I really want you to address that within yourself. So, their political affiliation is far more important to you than your relationship with them? I only love you because you vote the same as me?
Or you agree with me?
Yeah, these things don't make sense. If we stopped and paused and thought logically for a moment, we would realize that, you know what, political season is pretty stressful. And so, no matter where you fall on the spectrum, it can be a stressful time.
Yeah.
And news and media is feeding that stress a lot.
Mhm.
And you start taking that out on the people that you love and that love you.
Right, and I feel that as Christ followers, we have to be aware of this. That following Christ is far more important than your political party. We and sometimes we take that out of context and we put more on the political parties than we do on our relationship with Christ. He didn't call us to follow political parties. He called us to love people. And if we can't do that, are we really Christians? Because he said, they will know that you follow me, that you're Christians by your love, not by how you vote.
Yeah.
And if we're losing relationship because of how people vote, then yeah, you're right. We have to take a step back and understand what's the most important thing in my life. Is it my political party or is it Jesus? Because hey, if they never shared their politics with you, would you still love them?
Right. Right.
And if the answer is they're toxic people and that's why you've cut them off, okay, fine. That's different. Then, you don't agree with me politically, so now we can't be friends. That's a huge problem. You really got to check yourself and really understand that Jesus is love. That's where we need to land, not on the parties.
Yeah, and even if I don't understand sometimes, there may be a particular topic, right,
Mhm.
that we don't see eye to eye on that
We disagree strongly
yeah,
on.
we disagree. You see it one way, I see it a different way. That's okay. That's normal.
Yeah.
That's not anything for us to be like, we need to end our relationship over, no matter who that person is.
Mhm.
That's like Sabrina said, is very different from there's toxicity inside of a relationship versus we just don't agree about this thing. And you know what's great about the things you don't agree on? If you can actually be a person who's willing to listen inside of a conversation, you can have good conversation around that.
Yeah.
And you probably walk away feeling the same as you did,
Right.
and so does the other person, but you feel that love has been demonstrated by having the conversation, being heard, and having an opportunity to also hear. So that means a ton inside of a relationship, not trying to turn the person into thinking the way that you think, but just wanting to hear their perspective.
Yeah.
Those are important things.
Yeah, to me, that says that relationship is not about love if you're trying to constantly turn people to think what you're thinking. That's more about control.
Yeah.
That's not about love. That's yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about some of the things that we are in harmony with, the things that we agree on.
Okay. Well, I agree that it's important for us to demonstrate our love in our relationships. We have to take time to do that. And it's not about quantity, it's about the quality that we're willing to invest.
Okay. I agree that we need to make sure that we're being practical about the things that we do to really make sure we're prioritizing our relationships. It's not just about the feeling, it's about putting into action some steps to make sure that we are prioritizing the people in our lives.
Yes, and I agree that there's no element inside of our relationship that should drive me to the point of choosing not to love anymore. So, what are the things we need to work through in an open, honest conversation? We can figure out how we work through those things. It's not a matter of, if you don't agree with me, then I don't love you anymore. So I agree that we need to be very intentional about how we demonstrate our love for each other.
Yeah, and I agree that the word of God is true, that we will be known as Christians by our love.
That's great. That's great. So in your hustle, remember to always seek Yahweh and not my way.
We hope today's episode gave you something real, something you can take with you to build stronger relationships, a thriving business, and a life filled with purpose. Remember, life isn't about juggling it all. It's about finding that rhythm, harmony, or that flow that works for you. If this message resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share it with someone you think needs to hear it, or drop us a comment, because your voice matters. Check out our website and keep up with us on social. Until next time, stay blessed, stay focused, and keep moving in your rhythm.